Just after 6 a.m. in Israel, the sky is still painted in soft shades of early dawn as a formation of fighter jets begins to roll down a dimly lit runway. The sound of engines intensifies, breaking the morning silence as the aircraft lift into the air one after another, armed with long-range precision missiles and flying toward a destination hundreds of kilometers away. Inside command rooms filled with glowing screens and tense voices, intelligence officers monitor every movement. According to information gathered over months by American and Israeli agencies, a significant portion of Iran's most powerful leadership has gathered inside a heavily secured government compound in Tehran. Among those believed to be present is the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, a man who for decades has stood at the center of Iran's political and religious power. As the jets disappear into the horizon, few people across the region are aware that a chain of events has already been set in motion that could reshape the balance of power in the Middle East. Just over 2 hours later, the missiles reach their target. Without warning, explosions tear through the compound, sending shockwaves across nearby streets and neighborhoods. Windows shatter, thick smoke rises into the sky, and emergency sirens begin to echo throughout the city. In a matter of seconds, buildings that once symbolized authority and security are left damaged and burning. Reports soon emerged that multiple senior officials were inside at the time of the strike. Within hours, unconfirmed claims spread that Iran's supreme leader himself has been killed. The world watches in disbelief as one of the most dramatic and controversial military operations in recent history begins to unfold, raising urgent questions about what led to this moment and what consequences might follow. To understand how tensions reached such a breaking point, it is necessary to look back decades into Iran's modern history. Until 1979, the country was ruled by Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, an authoritarian monarch who maintained strong ties with the United States and Western powers. His government pursued rapid modernization and economic development, but it also faced criticism for political repression and growing inequality. Discontent eventually boiled over into mass protests and strikes that paralyzed the nation. In what became known as the Iranian Revolution, the Shah's regime collapsed, and Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned from exile to establish a new political system based on religious authority. The Islamic Republic that emerged sought to reshape Iran's identity, placing Islamic law and revolutionary ideals at the center of governance, while distancing the country from Western influence. Under Khomeini's leadership, hostility toward the United States and Israel became deeply embedded in Iran's foreign policy. The new government presented itself as a defender of oppressed communities across the region and opposed what it viewed as Western intervention. When Khomeini died in 1989, leadership passed to Ali Khamenei, a cleric who had steadily risen through the ranks of Iran's political establishment. Although he initially lacked the charisma and influence of his predecessor, Khamenei gradually consolidated power, becoming the ultimate authority over military, judicial, and political decisions. Over time, his leadership coincided with a period of growing confrontation between Iran and its rivals, as sanctions, proxy conflicts, and ideological rivalry intensified. A major turning point came in 2002, when international inspectors revealed that Iran had been enriching uranium at previously undisclosed facilities. While Iranian officials insisted that the program was intended for peaceful energy production, Western governments feared it could lead to the development of nuclear weapons. These concerns fueled a long period of diplomatic pressure, covert operations, and technological sabotage aimed at slowing Iran's nuclear progress. Cyber attacks disrupted key infrastructure. Mysterious explosions struck sensitive sites, and several nuclear scientists were assassinated under unclear circumstances. Each incident deepened mistrust and reinforced the perception that a larger confrontation might one day become unavoidable. In 2015, after years of tense negotiations, a breakthrough appeared possible when Iran agreed to limit its nuclear activities in exchange for relief from international sanctions. The agreement was celebrated by many as a triumph of diplomacy, offering hope that decades of hostility might gradually ease. Yet the deal remained controversial, particularly among political leaders who believed it failed to address Iran's broader regional ambitions. When the United States withdrew from the agreement in 2018, the fragile balance that had been achieved began to collapse. Sanctions were reimposed, economic pressure increased, and relations between Washington and Tehran deteriorated once again. By 2025, Iran was facing one of the most severe economic crises in its recent history. The national currency lost significant value, inflation surged, and everyday necessities became increasingly difficult for ordinary citizens to afford. Frustration spread across cities and towns as people struggled to cope with rising prices and limited opportunities. Demonstrations erupted, initially driven by economic grievances, but soon expanding into broader demands for political reform. Some protests remained peaceful, with crowds calling for change in public squares, while others escalated into clashes with security forces. The government responded with a sweeping crackdown, imposing restrictions on communication and arresting thousands of individuals. Reports of casualties fueled further anger and international criticism, adding to the already volatile atmosphere. At the same time, tensions between Iran and its adversaries continued to escalate. Military deployments increased across the region, and leaders exchanged increasingly sharp warnings. Diplomatic efforts persisted, with negotiators meeting repeatedly in an attempt to prevent open conflict. One final round of talks took place in Geneva in late February, raising cautious hopes that compromise might still be possible. Yet those discussions ended without agreement, leaving the situation dangerously unresolved. Within days, the focus shifted from negotiation rooms to military command centers, where plans that had been prepared over months were now ready to be executed. On the morning of February 28th, intelligence suggested that several of Iran's most influential officials were gathered inside a government compound in Tehran. Surveillance operations had reportedly tracked the movements of senior leaders for months, analyzing their routines and communication patterns. When analysts concluded that a rare opportunity had emerged, the decision was made to launch a coordinated strike. The attack unfolded with remarkable speed and precision, targeting specific buildings believed to house key figures. Satellite imagery later revealed extensive damage, while eyewitness accounts described scenes of chaos as emergency responders rushed to the area. Among those reported killed were high-ranking military commanders and national security officials, along with the country's supreme leader, whose death marked a historic turning point. The strike on the compound was only the beginning of a broader military campaign. Additional attacks targeted air defense systems and strategic installations, aiming to weaken Iran's ability to respond effectively. Fighter jets carried out repeated sorties, while long-range missiles struck infrastructure considered vital to military coordination. The United States soon joined the operation, focusing on targets located deeper inside Iranian territory. Warships launched cruise missiles from distant waters, and advanced rocket systems were deployed to hit command centers and logistical hubs. These actions reflected a calculated attempt to limit Iran's capacity for retaliation, while signaling a willingness to escalate if necessary. Despite the scale of the initial assault, Iran responded quickly. Officials announced a large-scale retaliatory operation, launching waves of missiles and drones toward Israeli and American positions across the Middle East. Air defense systems in several countries were activated as projectiles crossed national borders, and reports of interceptions and near misses spread throughout the region. Shipping routes in critical waterways faced renewed threats, raising fears about disruptions to global trade. The conflict rapidly expanded beyond its original targets, drawing neighboring states into a tense and uncertain situation where any miscalculation could lead to further escalation. In several cities across the region, civilians woke up to the sound of distant explosions or emergency alerts on their phones, unsure whether the next strike might land closer to home. Families gathered around televisions, watching live coverage and trying to understand what it all meant for their safety and future. Airports experienced sudden closures, flights were delayed or diverted, and highways filled with vehicles as people attempted to leave areas they believed might become targets. These human reactions revealed how geopolitical decisions made in secure offices can quickly ripple into the daily lives of millions who have little control over the outcome. The international reaction was swift and deeply divided. Supporters of the operation argued that it addressed long-standing security concerns and reduced the risk of future nuclear proliferation. Critics, however, questioned whether the strike complied with international law or represented a preventive war carried out during a moment of perceived weakness. Protests broke out in multiple countries, reflecting both opposition to Iran's policies and concern about the humanitarian and geopolitical consequences of military intervention. Financial markets responded with volatility as oil prices climbed sharply, driven by fears that instability in the Strait of Hormuz could disrupt energy supplies worldwide. Inside Iran, the death of the supreme leader triggered a complex wave of emotions. Some citizens viewed the event as the end of an era marked by repression and economic hardship, while others mourned a figure they believed had defended national sovereignty. Religious gatherings, public debates, and social media discussions revealed a society grappling with uncertainty about its direction. The government moved quickly to establish a provisional leadership structure, seeking to maintain stability and project confidence despite the uncertainty. At the same time, continued strikes and counterstrikes underscored the fragile nature of the situation, with each new development shaping the narrative of a conflict that was still unfolding in real time. As the days passed, the human cost of the confrontation became more apparent. Casualty figures remained difficult to verify, but reports indicated losses among both military personnel and civilians. In the end, the story is not only about missiles, diplomacy, or leadership struggles. It is also about the fragile balance between conflict and cooperation, and the choices nations make when confronted with fear, ambition, and the pursuit of security. History shows that wars can reshape borders, economies, and societies, but they can also create unexpected opportunities for dialogue and change. As the world continues to watch developments unfold, one truth stands out above all. The consequences of this operation will likely shape the Middle East for years to come, influencing decisions, alliances, and the hopes of those who dream of a more stable and peaceful future.